update on
Want to break old habits.
You can try. It's a great.
You get the microphone?
I'm working on it.
Can we go ahead and start? Can we go ahead and start?
Mr. Lyons, did you get the microphone?
no.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ellie's at home. I don't know where Barry is.
Tim, are we live? Good? Good? Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And we will start off with Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. I think there's a flag up here on the stage. Everybody stand with me. Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, to this special call meeting. And we felt like we would have it at the high school to allow for a little more room, so we could stay spread out, follow protocol. And so the first item on the agenda is item 3, communications. And we will be hearing from our fiscal agent, Chip from Barrett Financial Services, and he's going to give us an update on bonding potential. So, Chip, with the mic.
If you prefer, I was gonna say, if it's all right, may I stay over there and, you know, present with my max school then, you can't stay too?
Oh, yeah, that's okay with me.
Okay. Is that all right with you all? All right. I'll just go over here on the way out. That way, if the presentation goes bad, I can slip out real quickly anyway. All right. I think this might help project my voice a little bit better too. So on the boards, the presentation from which I'll be speaking, and I believe you all have a copy of it as well, board. Thanks for letting me be here. Appreciate it. I'm going to answer any questions you guys have. My charge was to, it's been a while since we've talked about bonding capacity. I think the last time we probably talked about it, or at least shared something related to it, back in February. A lot has changed since then, so we felt it's a good time to give you an update where you are now. interest rates are a lot lower, time's gone on, bonding capacity's changed. And I know that's one of the lessons that I always, when we give a talk on bonding capacity, we always talk about the fact that it just goes up and down and changes all the time. So the first page there, the one that has the taxpayer on the left and the Commonwealth on the right, I want to step back just a little bit and explain a little context on from where the funding comes and where it goes, how I calculate bonding capacity. Basically, Marion County Schools is the logo, Dream, Believe, Achieve, and you see the taxpayer and the Commonwealth are the two sources of funds for the school district to pay for, not only for building projects and things like that, but also pay teachers and staff and so forth. So state law requires that certain of these monies that come from the state and come from the taxpayers go to restricted funds. And that's that green box that I highlighted here. It says used for capital projects and debt service, building fund and capital outlay. Those are the two restricted funds that part of your taxpayer dollars go to and part of the funding from the state goes to, and it can only be used for bonding. That's what we focus on when Scott or the superintendent says, hey, what's our bonding capacity? We analyze how much is in that restricted fund, how much is flowing to it this year, and then we'll hold everything kind of constant and say, okay, if I have that for 20 years as an income stream, how much can I borrow? And that's exactly what we look at as restricted funds. General funds, we're not paying attention to. That's for staff and for programs and other things. There's also a line down here that SFCC offers of assistance. I put that down here because that's a separate pot of money that you all get from the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and it's why you went through the facility planning process. You know, you came out of there with a capital plan. The LPC came out with a facility plan, and that listed your needs on there. And I'm going to tell you what your bonding capacity is, and that facility plan is going to tell you how much your needs are. The difference between what you can borrow on the bonding capacity and what's listed on that facility plan is your unmet need. That drives a funding mechanism for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, which is the School Facilities Construction Commission. It's just an extra pot of money, and you guys have that money. I'm going to flip to page 2 on the presentation. And this is just for those that are more inclined to see the numbers. So this is Marion County, and you guys, the taxpayers, the board and the taxpayers supported a recallable nickel, and that was rewarded with money from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. You taxpayers are paying more towards facilities, are going towards this restricted fund, and because the taxpayers took that remarkable step to do that, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, the General Assembly, has rewarded Marion County with additional funding from the state that you would not have had otherwise. And you see it here. Your local nickel, which you've always levied, it generates about $780,000 per year right now. The recallable nickel is the extra $780,000 that your school board put in, or I'm sorry, that the additional money that the taxpayer put up. The state gives you the $530,000 already because of the first nickel, but when you levied that extra recallable nickel as a community, the Commonwealth of Kentucky kicked in an extra $500,000. So the fifth element that goes to this restricted fund is the capital outlay. And capital outlay is from a 1954 statute, and it's basically every school in Kentucky gets $100 per child, and that goes to restricted fund. And we count that as part of the bonding capacity. Now, if we calculate bonding capacity, we only focus on 80% of it because that's the regulations. We can only use 80% of it for borrowing. When you add all that up, I get $2.8 million per year in that that's going into that restricted fund that I could use to bond against or to borrow money against. I'm gonna pause for a second to say, on the right-hand side, there are these SFCC offers of assistance. That's that other money I referenced. The state every biennium has been giving Marion County Schools a share of the monies available to meet unmet need, and it totals to about $150,000 per year. Those are the revenues that are going into your restricted funds that we can measure bonding against. I'll pause for just a second, see if you all have any questions, or I can keep ripping through. Okay, it's exciting. I know. Bear with me. All right, so page 3, the summary of bonds outstanding. So, all right, I just said you have about $2.8 million coming in per year, plus you got that $150,000 of money sitting there waiting for you all. It's on behalf of the state. Well, you're already paying money on bonds that you've already borrowed. When I say you, I'm talking about the Marion County School Board. You know, the certain school buildings you all borrowed money against. And this list, and there's about, let's see, we have 7 issues right now outstanding with Marion County schools. Very typical. Schools across Kentucky. Originally, there was an amount borrowed about $20 million. The school board's only responsible now for paying $13 million back. The state pays for about about $5 million of it. You can see on the bottom here, there's 18 million total outstanding. There's 13 million that the school district's responsible for repaying, and then there's about 5 million that the state is responsible for repaying. This comment's kind of more for the public here, but you'll notice that on the original purpose, you see the first one says refund. The second one says this is renovations to Calvary and Marion County, the high school. The third one says refund. The fourth one says refund. Refund is just our industry speak for refinancing. That's just to let you all know the school board administration, when possible, seeks to refinance debt for interest rate savings, just like we all do with our own houses. That's the debt we're paying on. So the next page, page 4, shows you, yeah, there you go. That's too small for you all to see. I'll just tell you that when you look at those 7 bond issues and you add up the payments per year, the school board is paying about, out of that 2.8 million, they're paying about $1.2 million per year already on its bond payments. So what's left over is what we can use to measure bonding capacity. And so for the board, you all have, it's on that board, it's very difficult to see the board. You all see on the far right-hand column the cash flows that we use to predict your bonding capacity. That's assuming a couple of key things. The number of kids here don't change, because that's the biggest driver for you all in terms of state funding. Everything in Kentucky is driven off of equity, and the state does that through the facility support program in Kentucky. And if your ADA doesn't change, average daily attendance doesn't change, then these numbers are good. If your ADA drops, then these numbers drop. So that's just kind of, that's the cash flows we're looking at. And I'll walk back into the weeds with you whenever you want, but to kind of keep the conversation moving, I go to the next page. Here's what we could borrow right now. If I took advantage of all the 2.8 million that you have available and subtracted what you're already paying payments on, and then took everything else at the current interest rate environment and borrowed money against it, we'd be able to do a bond issue of around $38 million at today's interest rates. That just shows you how low interest rates are right now. It also shows you, if I was here in February, I reported to you guys in February what your bonding capacity was, and I was saying, hey, it's about $30 million or 25 or whatever I was saying. I feel like I'm yelling, I'm sorry. My girl's telling me I yell. We didn't know then that the state was going to equalize you at 100% of that for the nickel tax that the levy, extra nickel that the board levy and the community supported. At the time, we didn't know that the state was going to match that with the extra $500,000. So that's the big driver why you go from where we were in February to where we are now. Plus, interest rates have dropped precipitously since March with the outbreak of COVID. There you go. What that means is, hey, today, if I went out and borrowed money, I could borrow $38 million and kind of fit within the regulatory guidelines of KDE and their allowance on what you all can bond. And that would be for a 20-year period. The last page is my kind reminder that, this all changes. I mean, as we can see, legislative issues, the nickel for you all dramatically changed the bonding capacity for Marion County. You all hear me okay still? All right. Marion County, it dramatically changed bonding capacity for Marion County schools. And the state funding is a big one. State funding is statutory. It's driven by a calculation that's in statute. And, but the General Assembly doesn't have to fund it. You know, they could decide not to fund it at the statutory required level. That's happened once in my 18-year career, but it can happen. That would be bad if they didn't, bonding capacity wise. What would be good is if we don't do anything and rates don't change, we pay off more debt, of course you can borrow more money. It's pretty logical. If interest rates go down, you can borrow more money. If we're able to refinance debt lower, you're able to borrow more money, those kinds of things. So in the box on the bottom left, it basically says, for context, I just told you your bonding capacity is about $38 million. If we lose 100 kids in our ADA count, which is around 2,800, if we lose 100, then the bonding capacity, not changing anything else, but just the kids, the bonding capacity goes from 38 million to 36 million. If interest rates go up 100 basis points, so we just sold bonds today for Breckenridge County Schools. It was a 20-year deal. It was right around 2%. The rates are very low. So 2% is a very low rate for a 20-year fixed rate deal. Even if we were borrowing at 3%, I'd say those are very low rates. And when we were at 4%, I used to say those are very low rates. But if rates go up 100 basis points, in other words, instead of being able to borrow 2%, which is what we modeled to come up with $38 million bonding, if we modeled the bonding at 3%, then your bonding capacity is going to drop from 38 to 34 million. You see the interplay interest rates have on bonding capacity. I think that's kind of what I mainly wanted to cover. On this. You know, just going to stop for a second.
All right. Any questions for Chip?
So basically, you lose over $1 million just on kids alone. That's not including. I guess my basic question is, we wouldn't start a project till down the road. The interest rate you're talking about is right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not tomorrow.
That's right.
So it could change totally in another direction
It could.
within a year.
It could. Sure. Yes, the kids number changes. That's why Marion County Schools as a district pays very close attention to attendance and counts each kid, keep that ADA because it drives funding for SEEK and for everything. It's very important, as you know. So I'm saying today, based on the ADA of record and interest rates as of today, that's what your bonding capacity is. Either one of those change over the next month or 2 months or 6 months or 16 months, those numbers of bonding capacity will change.
So we can't lock in a rate today.
No, I mean, if you can, if you had a project approval, like Breckenridge County Schools, the reason why we were able to sell bonds is because they have firm construction bids in hand. So that's the process. We can, with K-12, we can only sell bonds when you have firm construction bids in hand. Other entities, when I work with plant boards or utilities or cities and counties, City of Henderson, we might borrow money now, even though all the bids won't be in until February. School districts can't do that. You have to have the construction bids in hand.
So we can't lock in these good rates until we have a construction bid in hand.
Correct.
What's the typical timeline? So if we were to approve the PG one tonight, what timeline would we be looking at before we can sell bonds and lock in rates at that point?
So when the school district says, hey, we're doing our project and we're ready to, we just want to make sure the money's in place. Can you work with me and tell me how it's all going to work? What we do is say, okay, when is the board going to award the construction contract? That's what we key on, and then we build our schedule after that. So if you know when I'm saying if one knows when the construction, when the architect is going to have a design that the board approves, and the architect is going to put those out in the street for construction bids, and they usually hang them out there for 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the project. And the architect gets those bids back in, sorts through them, and comes to the board and says, here's your bids you got on your construction project. This is our professional recommendation in terms of which one to accept. that date and that meeting is what I build my schedule off of, or we build our schedule off of for selling bonds. Does that answer?
Randy is here,
Oh,
RTA. He may
cool. Hey, Randy, sorry, man.
To answer your question, it really depends on what the project is. If you told me you were gonna do a new elementary school to do the construction, and then like Tim was saying, actually have it out for public bid, and then accept those bids, and you had a bid in hand before then you all could actually approve those bids. So you're probably looking 9 to 10 months for like a new elementary school. If you told me you were going to do a roof replacement here at this high school, that's a shorter duration because we could turn the documents around much quicker, go through even a shorter bid process. So, we could probably have that done in 3 months. And most of that has to do with just getting through KDE and getting approvals through KDE. So it really depends on the project, but probably at least 3 months on any project. But obviously a larger project is going to take a longer duration to design.
So if we say we could look at it 3 months out the road, is what you're saying?
Well, I said a roof replacement.
Right.
If we were just doing a roof replacement, that's a very simple project. But if we were doing a more extensive renovation inside the building and looking at an addition potentially, that's a longer duration. But any project, to get through KDE as far as getting the BC1 approved, getting the schematic design approved, and construction documents, that depending on what tier they sign it, it's probably a minimum of 3 months just to get through the process of getting approvals from KDE.
So, once you have the approval of the awarding of the bid, the construction bid, you say you start to bid your timeline from there, what's the typical timeframe from that time that you lock in a rate?
Yeah, what Randy was saying that KDE has a certain time period they need. So for my side of it, they typically will, I'm gonna say it's about 30 to 45 days from that date. And how about that for a short answer? So I can walk you through the steps, but that's probably the,
I mean, that's,
yeah.
I think that was the basic question, how long, range of time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, 30 to 45 days after that meeting date where the board awarded construction bids, typically when we can sell bonds.
So, if it would take, say, 9 to 10 months, if you went back in time, 9 to 10 months into the Breckenridge County deal, what do you think the rate would be?
Well, I know, I can tell you this, I don't know what it had been that long ago, but I do know, we sold bonds for Breckenridge County Schools in May of this year at 280 for a 20-year deal that, at 280, it was, we just sold bonds today at 2%, 20-year deal. So 280, 2%, the same
Really, the
issue.
big drop was in about March and April.
Mhm, right.
So
Yeah,
this May deal was even after the big drop.
Yeah, May was May was a good time. I mean, May felt like a great time to issue debt.
Right.
Because rates were going like that. The market, what happened was the market seized. It locked up March 17th, something like that. I can't remember the day exactly. And then once things kind of got moving again, interest rates were super low because the Fed was pumping in tons of money and kind of saying, hey, the market's okay, the market's okay. And then once investors came back, they came back with a fevered pitch, which is where we are now.
So if we approved the BG1 and started the process and we were 9, 10 months out, with how much certainty could you tell us what our bonding position is going to be?
No, I wouldn't have certainty on that. I mean, it's kind of weak of me to say, but, the truth is interest rates, I'm not worried about Marion County. I kind of know the health of the county and kind of where it's headed, demographics and economics. I feel very good about that. So it's not that changing that bothers me. The interest rate side of it, I don't know where they will be. There is a biennium budget coming up I'm sorry. Normally the General Assembly does a biennium budget. They do a 2-year budget. This year they only did a 1-year budget because of COVID. So January 1 of this year, they're going to examine all of funding And what does that mean for K-12? I don't know. But it does drive your all's bonding capacity because it impacts facilities support program in Kentucky.
But you say about every 1% change in interest rates, about $4 million.
And for you all, yeah.
Any other questions for Chip?
So how long have our interest rate been steady since around March?
How long have they been steady? Yeah, it was, like I said, rates were steady before COVID. And then March hit and our market freaked the heck out and just nobody could do anything. There was no market for 3 or 4 days. And then quickly the federal government came in and it was a really quick recovery. We're better than we were. That's where Breckenridge, we were selling bonds in the 280 range for a 20-year deal. Rates have been going like that steadily lower for the last 3 months to where we're selling at 2%.
So based on the current bonds that we have outstanding, interest rates were made, are there any additional opportunities that we're going to have to look refinance?
No, I mean that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on is keeping the administration in the loop on that. I mean the 2012 deal. So the deals that we're refinancing now are vintage 2012 and older. You have one 2012 issue that we have 3, but one of them it's going to be paid off in 2 years. It's too short of a time for us to make the economics work on it for your all's benefit. It's kind of the same thing with the 2012. They're refinancing to begin with anyway. So 2 of your 2012 deals are going to be paid off within 5 years, 3 and 5 years. So, but I promise you, the first chance you guys have, you'll hear from us, and we'll bring it to your all's attention.
So you got your finger on the pulse of the market for interest rates. What do you see from the near-term future long term? I see the federal government is starting to pay on the low side or when they control. What do you see here?
Take this for what it's worth. I came here forgetting a mask, and I don't know anybody that's done that the last 2 months. I had to borrow a mask. So take this for what it's worth, what I think. I don't know. I mean, I personally think rates will kind of hover low for a little while, but who knows what happens towards, the election time and end of the year. All I know is kind of what the pundits say. The pundits say that the federal government's going to do everything it can to keep, us from having a really hard landing when we're all supposed to be getting back to work, like we're all supposed to be getting back to work too. But I honestly don't have a good. I've been wrong for 18 years. 18 years. I've always said, hey, rates, they might go up. So now's a good time to lock them in. But for 18 years, the rates have kind of gently done that. But I think we all know that they have to kind of go back at some point in time. Who knows when that is? I certainly don't. I do feel for the first time in my career very comfortable that, and when I'm talking like for a time period, I'm talking like a couple of months. I feel for a couple of months rates are going to kind of stay range bound. I don't think much is going to happen with interest rates. I mean, I'm totally wrong. I gave you no opinion on rates there. I'm sorry. I don't know. I should have just said that. Yeah. I mean, that's a report that, we do get the benefit of listening to a lot of accomplished economists, and, that's what they'll say, is the rates will be range bound and they should go up, first part of next year. That's making a lot of assumptions about what the economy is going to do and, vaccines and stuff like that.
So there really is no way, to understand, we could wait and not do anything tonight and see what happens, and then 9 or 10 months down the road be worse off than we would have been if we took action tonight, and there's no way to know which one would be the right decision until we get down there.
Yeah, I think you're right. Say it again, just so if I agree with you, that I'm agreeing to what I think you said.
So there's no way for us to know, we could wait a few months just to see how things shake out.
In terms of interest rates?
In terms of interest rates.
Yep.
And we would be selling bonds 9 to 10 months from now.
Yeah.
And we won't know whether we made the the right decision by waiting, or if we could have taken action tonight and been better off 9 to 10 months. from now.
Gotcha.
There's no way to say.
No, I mean, I mean, here's how I would think about it. I'm telling you a number, it's 38 million. It's a lot more than 8 million. And you know what I mean? It's a lot less than 58 million. It's a roundabout number, it kind of gives you an idea of what you can afford, plus or minus a pretty good margin. The markets are gonna move, they're gonna change, you just decide what you need to do. And then, the market will either be there for you or won't, but you see how sensitive interest rates are with bonding capacity. That's a big driver on it.
And I think the last figures that we were working with were between 26 and 27 million.
There's a lot less. I mean,
So
yeah.
this is a lot more.
It's a lot more, and again, primarily because the board took with support of the community and levied a tax that the community is giving $700,000 more to the school to use. The state is matching that with $500,000 extra money that you all did not have, and you would not have had that measure not been taken. That dramatically changed bonding capacity and interest rates going like that.
So, I mean, it'd probably be fair to say that, or I would think so anyway, that we probably should neither wait nor go based on interest rates, right?
You're right.
Like interest rates shouldn't be, trying to predict or time interest rates would not be the reason we would either do something or not do something. I think we should just be mindful that interest rates can change very quickly like they have. And, that could change our bonding pretty dramatically, pretty fast, like it did this time.
I think with my personal professional opinion on it is, we're not talking about a refinancing, where you're trying to be opportunistic about interest rates. We're talking about borrowing money to support projects. The money that the board saves is really saved with an architect and the time that you take to get it designed, what you want, and that kind of thing. The markets will be what they'll be when you're ready to receive. That's our professional advice always is, don't let rates drive your decisions. Let your project drive your decisions, and the rates will be there, or they won't. But
Not a lot we can do about it.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions for Chip? Okay. Thanks, sir. Appreciate you coming down.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for the mask.
Okay, next item is 4A. Need a motion for 4A.
Make a motion, we consider approval of CFP option number 4.
I'll second that. Okay. Anyone want to start the discussion? Okay, so Plan 4 is one we're looking at here, board resolution from October 9th. Calls for a 400 student Calvary Elementary. Renovation of the high school are all top 2 project, and then renovation of Lebanon Elementary. So for me, this plan, some questions I have about this plan is it calls for 400 student Calvary Elementary, and we currently have, approximately 200. So where would the 200 additional students come from? And by that, I don't necessarily mean what road or what part of the community, but what other elementary school? Are they gonna come from West Marion or Lebanon or Glasscock, or where are we gonna get the 200? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the last time that we went through the redistricting process was about, 15 years ago? Best practice is typically to do redistricting once every 5 to 7 years, and that's not necessarily to address population growth. You can address population shift. And so I think whether we did anything at all, we would still need to look at redistricting our elementary school attendance zones. So when you ask the question of where these students are gonna come from, my answer would be that we would need to examine all attendance zones so that we could level our elementary school enrollment, utilize the facilities that we have, but also, I mean, we focused a lot over the last few years of providing equitable experiences for our students across the board, from the middle school level all the way up to the high school. And because we have such a disparity in our elementary school populations, we're not seeing similar experiences across our elementary school populations. So for me, it's not necessarily where are we gonna pull these kids from to feed this one school. It's how do we redraw the lines for all of our elementary schools to ensure that each elementary school aged child gets the exact same experience, whether they go to Glasscock, West Marion, Lebanon Elementary School, or Foundry.
Gotcha. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Well, I do have a thought. The last time we got into redistricting, people got in an uproar because one didn't want to go here or one didn't want to go there. And it really became a battle
I'm sorry.
between,
David, can't hear you.
oh, sorry, David.
It's playing pretty
Loud
loud.
back here, Dave, sorry.
Uh-huh.
And I'm past dead, my wife tells me all the time.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm gonna pull this down. The last time we got into redistricting, if I'm not mistaken, the whole county got in an uproar because one didn't want to go one place, one didn't want to go another place. It's like we're privatizing some of the schools and we're not privatizing some of the other schools. Some kids can go here, some kids can't go there. I've had people calling me already over, what are y'all gonna do when you redistrict? And it's like, we haven't got that far yet. Let's sit down and look at the bigger picture right now. But if we wanna get into that, maybe that's something we should look at first, instead of going through some of this. Find out where all the kids are. And if I'm not mistaken, there's probably a pegboard somewhere around here that I even worked on at one time when I worked for the school system. Where every child is in our community, where they're going to school and where maybe they should be going to school instead of where they are going to school. So it does become a battleground when you get into talking about redistricting kids. And it becomes a danger zone as far as I'm concerned, because it's everywhere. It's not just one, Marion County, it's not just Marion County, it's all school systems, I don't care where you go. But when you do get to talking about it, it is a battleground, and people become very riled. Not just having that feeling of this is my school and I don't want my school to go anywhere. Been there, done that. So I think it is something important that maybe we should be looking there before we even look at any of this other stuff.
I can appreciate that. I kind of feel like we've been living on a battleground for the last 4 years anyway,
Yes.
so it wouldn't be that different than where we've been. We were in a battleground over the reconfiguration. We were in a battleground over our district facilities plan. Redistricting is simply the next step. And as I said, even if we didn't have money to do anything, it's still something that we would need to look at. And I agree with you. I think the current attendance zones make no sense whatsoever. West Marion's attendance zone extends from the northern border of the county to the southern border and the entire western third of Marion County. Lebanon Elementary School has this little hourglass-shaped sliver that goes down the center of the county, and then Calvary's got a little pocket here, and Glasscock's got that upper eastern corner. I see no rhyme or reason to the way that the lines were drawn. I mean, I have questions about why they do this in some places.
Yeah.
So whether or not it's a difficult conversation, I don't believe that this group has shied away from difficult conversations when it's the right thing to do. We've had those conversations, we continue to have those conversations, so this is just the next step. But I do think that we need to know how many elementary schools we're gonna have and where they're going to be before we can have a redistricting talk.
If I can interject, I think I can carry my voice a little bit. If I can interject, Plan 4 actually has the least impact on the number of kids that could potentially move as opposed to the other three that we've talked about over the years, or months or years.
Anyone else on that? So, okay, well, I mean, so, like, I agree with Ms. Truitt about, doing the best we can for equalizing enrollment and trying to create a similar experience for all of our students. Like, I agree 100% with that. And I think, you know, trying to make that work with a 400 student Calvary, like, so here's my issues with that. It means we're gonna have to pull approximately 200 students from either West Marion, Lebanon Elementary, or Glasscock, or some combination of the three. We already have capacity at those schools for those number of students. So when we pull them out of there, we'd be building a new space, underutilizing the current space we have, because we would be removing those students to fill the new school or to help fill it. And I think we'd be looking at most definitely increased transportation costs every year by doing that to transport these students to the new school. I believe, you know, part of the plan would be, and I think it probably should be, a preschool portion. I think that's gonna increase our annual operating cost. I think that, you know, doubling essentially the size of the building in itself is gonna increase costs from, you know, maintaining it, heating it, cooling it, insuring it, so forth and so on. It's gonna be a bigger space to take care of. So, you know, I see lots of additional costs, and I don't, you know, I don't see anywhere that this plan is gonna cut any cost anywhere. So I think we're, you know, we could potentially be positioning ourselves where we really don't have any choice but to raise taxes, because we would have a lot of additional costs to make this work. So, you know, for me, that's the biggest concern. And, you know, it's no secret, I believe, you know, I think that a consolidation would be more efficient and give us opportunities to do other things with the savings we've realized. So that, you know, that'd be my stance, or my concern with this plan is it, you know, it's just gonna take a lot to make it work. As far as moving, that's a lot of students to move from these three schools out to Calvary.
But one of the things that we do have in consideration this evening is we can build it for the common areas for 400 and actually build it for 300. That would minimize the impact and still allow us the flexibility for population growth. The local economic board just announced this last week that instead of having 300 open positions, we've got 400 now. We're conducting job fairs at surrounding counties trying to draw workers into this particular area. With those workers will come kids. I took it upon myself to do an unscientific survey of OBGYNs in the local area, and they are predicting an increase in November of birth rates. Surprise? So I think we've got to truly consider that we've got to build for the future and build for the success of Marion County.
Any other thoughts?
I mean, I think when you talk about the potential of underutilized capacity, we're really talking about, you know, if we took our current elementary school enrollment of 1,350 and divided that by 4, we would have around 350 children per elementary school, not counting preschool children. Glasscock's current K-5 enrollment is 432. So you're talking about moving 80 children out of that building into a different school. I've got children that go to that school, and so when we're talking about the kids going to class every day, it doesn't feel overcrowded at its current enrollment. But as everybody in this room knows, parent and family engagement is a huge driver of student success. And so when Glasscock holds family and parent events, it's a nightmare over there. We're parking 3 across at the turnabout. There are lines from the cafeteria to the gymnasium there. And so those common areas stay the same for events and things like that. So I don't think that by pulling 80 children, K through 5, out of that building, you're still gonna have preschool kids there. So I don't think it's gonna feel like we've got empty spaces that are gonna go underutilized in that building. And it increases the opportunity for family events to be more successful, to be more engaging, because we simply have the space to stay and really experience our children's schools. I think when you're talking about a consolidation, you're adding more children to that same building. And so I don't, as a parent in that building, to add more children there, I know that the staff of every single building that we have would knock it out of the park, no matter how many kids we gave them. Have no doubt. But is that really what's best for those students and those families? That's where I don't believe that consolidated schools help, because when you're talking about smaller schools, you're talking about not only the teachers in the classroom that are laying eyes on those children, you're talking about the secretary and the attendance clerk and the principal and the guidance counselor and the cafeteria workers and the custodians. That's more time for all of those people to lay eyes and wrap their arms around those kids. I mean, so when you increase the enrollment of an elementary school, it increases the weight on all of those people's shoulders. And I believe that the opportunity to miss a child is there. Now, it's always there. But when they're dealing with more children, I believe it's a greater possibility. So that's why I'm a proponent of those smaller schools, those smaller fields.
So do you think there's a difference between, say, Glasscock and Calvary from that respect? With the difference in the numbers?
I think
Your child goes to Glasscock, so.
right, and we love that school. Absolutely love Glasscock, and we bought our house where it is because we wanted to stay in Glasscock School District, regardless of what the rule is here. That's where we wanted to be. So our children absolutely adore Glasscock Elementary School. And so you still get that community feel. But do I know if the atmosphere would change there if we went from an enrollment of 432 plus preschool to 500 plus preschool? That's a significant jump for me. Because when you put preschool kids in there, even though they don't count on paper, they're real children in the building. And so we're talking about the potential of.
So you're talking about adding the Glasscock if we consolidate?
Absolutely. I don't think that a consolidation plan would be just a simple consolidation of Lebanon Elementary and Calvary Elementary. I mean, if you're talking about transportation and just consolidating those 2 attendance zones, it's just, again, the attendance zones don't make a lot of sense to me as they are right now.
So you think Calvary and Lebanon would have too many to do a simple consolidation?
I think we would need to redistrict regardless of what we did, so that we could ensure even enrollment across the board.
So you're proposing that when we're done redistricting, that we have even enrollment over 4 schools?
As close as we can get. Now, I understand that a cost-saving measure for us tonight is to build Calvary Elementary School for 300 with common spaces for 4. And so we would be talking about an additional 50 kids. So if you're going from 350 to 300 at Calvary, that's 50 kids that would be districted to West Marion, Lebanon Elementary School, and Glasscock.
Well, if we did that, would we have just as big a gap or even bigger gap than if we did the simple consolidation?
I don't think so. I mean, we're talking about a gap between 300 and 365. We've got 3 schools at 365 and 1 school at 300.
And you think that like a 65 student gap is bigger than, what's at Lebanon Elementary?
Just over 3.
Yeah.
Under currently.
So we'd have about 510 or something with the simple consolidation?
Mhm.
And Glasscock's is
432.
432, so it'd be similar.
It's a similar gap. But again, I don't believe that we should do anything without looking at our attendance zones.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about DFP Plan 4?
So even though also regardless of what we vote on tonight, I mean, this is still, it has to go through KDE and the
We have to have a public hearing,
public hearing.
and then it would go to KDE for approval.
And they will get, you know, a board whatever, you know, whatever we come up with, they get the LPC, and then, you know, ultimately, they've got the final say in all of this. But I do kind of agree to some degree with Peggy that, you know, the elephant in the room, that it's kind of the unspoken thing. If people want to keep their schools, but at the end of the day, a lot of kids won't be, you know, the families that are fighting for their school now, when it's said and done, may not be going to that same school.
The key thing is it does minimize the impact to the kids where they're going now compared to any of the other plans that are available to us on the table or was on the table. This is the smallest impact available to us as a choice.
Well, I don't know, David. I mean, it just depends. It depends on what we do. I mean, if,
I think that whenever
If
the
you add-
redistricting does come into play, that will be a consideration to try to keep as many kids as humanly possible in the same area or same school. I mean, you wouldn't go into it thinking that you're gonna try to switch a lot of kids, would you?
You still have to look at the whole picture. It's not just taking this street and saying, you're gonna go here.
I
You
reckon,
have to take that whole picture. And kids who were going to Calvary or West Marion or Glasshoff might not be going there anymore.
recognize.
They might be going here.
I'm not saying they will,
Okay.
I'm just saying that of the four options, the math tells me, based upon what I saw in the papers, BF3, 4, and 5, BF4 has the lowest number of potentially impacted kids. If you close 3, if you go with DFP3, you're gonna close Calvary, you're gonna close Lebanon Elementary, there's 500 students that are gonna go to the Night Academy, those 600 are gonna go to a different school, that's 1,100 kids.
yeah, I mean, if you go with Plan 3 and Calvary and Lebanon, go to the Night Academy, then they're gonna be going to a different school. I guess the other two schools would probably be, those two schools would be more impacted by Plan 3 than 4. The other two would be less impacted, and then in Plan 3, the West Marion and Glasscock are gonna be more impacted than they would have been in Plan 3. So, yeah, I guess, you know, both ways, obviously, there's gonna be some impact. Any other comments? Questions? Okay. All right, we'll take a roll call vote, to approve DFP plan option 4. I'll start, I'm a no. Ms. Downs,
No.
Ms. Truitt,
Yes,
Mr. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 3-2. Now we will need a motion for 4B.
I make a motion, we consider approval to conduct a public hearing of DFP number 4.
I'll second it.
Any questions or comments on that? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Need a motion for 4C.
Motion to consider approval of appointment of a district facility plan public hearing officer.
Second?
Who do we need to put a person's name in the motion?
I think so. Scott, is this typically the facilities person or financer? Okay. Mr. Abel.
Motion to appoint Mr. Abel as the district facilities paying public hearing in the district.
Second.
Any questions or comments on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Need a motion for 4E.
I'll make a motion, we consider approval of a BG one for the Marion County High School project. And I know we've got two options. So how do we have a discussion about those options without naming an option in the motion?
Question?
The reason I had two prepared is because I wanted to make sure that the board had the two options that they could pick from.
Sure.
And that's what Randy and I discussed. I would say that it would be acceptable to say that you want to make a motion for a BG one for the high school, and then you can always go back and
Okay.
X that motion and do the other one.
Okay.
I mean, that's where we are, that's what we have in front of us.
Sure.
And Randy is here to answer questions. And here's what.
So Randy, on this BG one, it
Do
looks
we-
like.
Wait a minute, we need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Second, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Jim, with your question.
So it looks like, I guess, the primary difference is the CTE space between the two.
That is correct.
Okay.
And if I could just offer a little bit further explanation, so as Ms. Foster said, her and I discussed this and she asked me to prepare both of these. So option A is for renovations and addition as contained in the 2015 DFP, because even though you all just approved a new one as a board, your current DFP is the one that is on file at KDE, which is the 2015 version. So I took literally the description that's contained for the high school, and included that description as the renovation part of that. And then the addition that was below it, that is the locally identified CTE, 5,900 square feet. So option A had both the renovation and addition. And then we talked about just doing option B that would just be for the renovation component of that. And how I got to those numbers was I took the number that was contained in this DSP, which was 5 years ago, and I applied an inflation factor to that number to come up with the renovation updated cost, basically. And then I took the addition and applied the most current KDE cost per square foot that they say to use for a new addition. So just to offer some explanation of where those two where the numbers came from.
So, based upon the detail that you so kindly sent this week, thank you again for that. Both of these will address the critical and poor conditions that we have classified on that detail.
Yes. So in 2015, even back then, it was recognized that there were issues with the roof that needed to be replaced, and gutters and downspouts, and there were renovations of specific areas, including spaces like the science labs that was contained in that description.
Randy, Ms. Foster's got a question.
So just to be clear, on our 2015 plan, when you look at that plan, the high school renovation had some items that were marked off because of the way the plan had been originally constructed. So I just want to, am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you look at that, there were some spaces that were included in addition that were marked off, and that was because the assumption was in this plan, we were building, or this plan proposed building an 8-9 center attached to the high school where we would address some of the space efficiencies, like science lab, and some other items that would be included as part of that 8-9 center addition, which obviously didn't happen, hasn't happened. So just that's a good note, because that 8-9 center didn't happen, there's still may be some program deficiencies that were not identified, because the only thing left, there wasn't our topic, CTE, and that's part of the amendment that came out as part of this one.
And to the board, I'm just asking that clarifying question because the last thing I would want to come back when we start this programming is that if we add those things and then we put this out to bid, then your construction cost will be more. There's, oh, I thought that was the fire alarm. I wouldn't have been surprised. Well, many times the fire alarm goes off here for no apparent reason. But does that make, am I, you know, making myself, just wanted to clarify that because there were 3 resource rooms, a science classroom, a science lab, a computer lab, and an enlarged media center that would not be included. And I know that science labs have been discussed numerous times over the past several years.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Also, when we issue this BG1, and, you know, we get this back, you know, we still able to like kind of pick and choose, you know, hey, we're doing this, but we want to do, you know, these items now, or do they all have to be?
No, so you can pick and choose, and Ms. Foster and I talked about this, there was literally an possibility of potential options that you all could consider for inclusion in the BG1. So we tried to at least simplify and say, well, let's just do renovations and then renovations and additions. So you can pick and choose to do specific components, like we talked about at the last meeting. You chose to address the HVAC system, or the roof and the HVAC system as a project, or the roof, the HVAC system, and renovate science labs. I mean, that could be a project. You define the project based on what the BG1 says. Okay.
Let's say we went with the renovation and addition. Do we have any idea what we envision utilizing that CTE space for? Like that additional 5,900 square feet?
And typically what happens is the architect will work with that particular school, and we will look at all kinds of different needs assessment. And they'll work with the high school principal, some identified staff, look at scheduling, the future trends. And so, you know, so to answer your question, no, but we would want to work with that school staff and faculty. And even, you know, as we talk about the future, like what does that look like? What does the future of, you know, what is programming gonna, what are the programming needs gonna look like in the next 2 to 3 to 5 to 10 years?
Any other questions? Well, personally, obviously, I think the high school needs attention. I'd be, all for getting that going. Randy, what if we approve this BG1 and then we wanted to do more? I mean, would you essentially advise that you'd want to do it all under one BG1 or do more later?
This facility at the high school,
Yes.
you can always go back and modify BG1 to add to it, change the description, change the budget numbers for that matter. A BG1 gets modified actually several times during the project. And the board can choose to go back and revise a BG1 from the original approval. So let's say in the original BG1, you didn't include a swimming pool. But, you could go back at some point and add a scope of work that you didn't originally include in the BG1. That swimming pool is not a good example, because that's not a KD model program
Well, on the surface, I wouldn't be opposed to that, opposed to approving this BG one, but to be consistent, you know, I think approving a BG one before we ever even have a public hearing on this plan is a little jumping, you know, a little getting the cart before the horse in my view, so that would be my stance on it. I don't believe I can support it. Any other discussion or questions?
So the public hearing, I mean, I assume that the process for a public hearing, it basically takes place after we have voted to approve a plan. And so we can hear public comments and absolutely take that feedback. But in looking at the timeline, like the public hearing process is kind of that last thing before you send it off.
Do we have to vote, do we have to vote again after the?
Yes, so here's the next step, since you all approved public hearing option. So contact will be made on the district, you have, you know, those called AE, this is where we're at. They issue what's called a hearing package, which is a standard template package to all school districts. We have to wait, we get that in hand, and we have to advertise for a minimum of 14 days in order to expect to the eleven prize. So we have to work their deadlines, and be two consecutive weeks, 14 days of advertising on the meeting. At that meeting, that public officers, Mr. A will record on the template, all the documentation, Katie provides the template package. At that point, he gets all together at a reference call or a special call meeting. You all will review his report, approve it, and then everything's packaged up.
Right, so we're not taking another vote on the plan, we're taking a vote on
You
the
have to take
hearing.
another vote, yes. You have to take into consideration the public comments and public hearing.
Okay,
You do both at the same time, which all that's from.
So the answer is yes, they're gonna have to
We have
vote
to
on this
vote,
plan.
yeah,
So
we
we
have to
don't
vote.
know where all is from. That's the public hearing, you take consideration of public hearing comments.
So basically, we're voting to just put it out to the public.
Well, no, we have to, we have to, having the public hearing is part of the process. So we'll have the public hearing and then we will vote again on the DFP number 4 for the final approval, so to speak, after the public hearing. So any other discussion on 4D? Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote again. I'm sorry.
Which option?
Oh, I'm sorry. Which option was the motion made for?
let's, option A, it gives us flexibility.
Okay. So 4D is to consider option A for BG1 for Marion County High School project. I'll vote no. Ms. Downs?
No.
Ms. Truitt?
Yes,
Mr. Eubank?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
All right, passes 3-2. And you need a motion for 4E.
I'd like to make a motion to consider approval of BG one for Calvary Elementary School project.
second.
Any discussion or questions on this?
I mean, we've got several options in front of us on this one as well. And I think the point that you made, Brad, at our work session, that we wouldn't want to overbuild, I think is why we have options to consider on this. So I don't know that I would be in favor of constructing a new Calvary Elementary School to serve 400 students with classrooms and common spaces. I think we need to leave ourselves the room to grow, but not necessarily, or understanding that we're not there at the moment.
You talking about option B?
Yes.
you would prefer 300 over 400?
It's not a preference, it's just an understanding of the reality of our enrollment. So if we build it for 300, that serves our current enrollment. And allows us to impact fewer students through redistricting at that point. But it also, because the common spaces are built for 4, it allows us the room to grow when we see it. Instead of, again, like you said, overbuilding.
So, and the price difference between 300 and 400 is approximately $1 million, 12 million to 11 roughly. Okay. Any other?
My thing is, I guess, you know, when it comes to a BG1 to high school, I saw that as, you know, going on and starting needs that, I mean, the high school has the same common needs in every plan regardless, like roof, electrical, science labs, you know, those things are in every plan we've ever looked at, you know, all the way back to 2015. You know, when it comes to approving the Calvary, I feel like, you know, we've kind of got a process in place where, you know, we've got an LPC, we're doing this, it goes to the state. You know, my personal opinion, I feel like the board would be kind of strong arming, you know, arming the process at this point and not, you know, letting it take course, I feel like as it should. So I feel like, you know, at this stage, you know, I'm not as inclined to support, you know, a BG1 for Calvary like I would with the high school.
Okay. Any other comments?
I don't disagree with you. I think we have, we've demonstrated, and our community has demonstrated over and over again that the high school is a priority for everyone. And so, you know, supporting that BG1 makes all the sense in the world so that we can move to address those critical or fair needs that we have in front of us. You know, and I think with Calvary Elementary School having its needs as well, I can see it both ways. Moving forward with understanding where we are with regard to bonding potential, I think, is there efficiencies to be gained by doing 2 projects at once and things like that. So, I mean, I think we could honestly go either way on this one.
Thing is, we wouldn't be able to bond at the same, since these projects would almost take place at different intervals. You know, obviously, if we started things at the high school, we have an opportunity to start a lot sooner. If we were to do a high school renovation, that timeline is a lot later, so we wouldn't really be able to bond at the same time for those, would we?
I think one of the key things to consider, and I'm not locking in interest rate by any stretch of the imagination, is, but we do recognize where a place in time where we are is that interest rates are low. And recognizing that it will take 9 months to a year, something to that effect. There's a timeline out there that until we push this start button, doesn't start. If we have the fortunate advantage at the end of this 9 to 12 months that we do pull the trigger on a BG1, that we pray to everybody in the world that interest rates are still where they are today. We maximize the taxpayer monies and get the biggest bang for our buck while fulfilling what we told the public.
And I think, you know, I mean, Dave, I wish we had a crystal ball on interest rates, as do a lot of people. Be a lot of money to be made if they knew, right? But, you know, I think as we, you know, I think that the timing of the interest rates are gonna be, you know, they could be a little better in a year, but they probably won't. They might be the same. I mean, who knows? Like I said, a year ago, we thought they were really good. They're even better now, but I mean, I agree with, you know, I agree with Kerry and Jim on the high school. You know, it definitely is consistent, as Jim said. We all recognize that in any plan, the needs there. I just, you know, I think it's just a little unfair to do one plan, not knowing what your full plan is, because you're gonna be either restricting or taking away from one project or the other, depending on what you do here. You do more or less, or what if you do more and then there's not enough bonding to do the other things you wanna do, so. And that's, you know, kind of my reasoning behind the last vote. Any other comments on 4E? If not, we'll vote. I'll start. I'm a no. Ms. Downs?
No.
Ms. Truitt?
Yes.
Mr. Eubank?
No.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Okay, motion fails, 2-3. Motion for 4F?
I think given that we've approved a DFP, we can likely table this one for the time being.
We get a motion for both to table. Yeah, we probably should do that.
Table it or make a
Make a motion to table it.
I'm gonna make a motion to table 4F.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, moving on to 5A, consider approval of fiscal year 2021 working budget. Need a motion for that.
Make a motion for.
No, go ahead.
Make a motion for 5A, consider approval of the 2021 working budget.
Mr. Spalding?
Real quick, pretty clean process, 4 changes on the expense side, 4 changes on the revenue side. On the expense side, we added $31,000 to the budget for the Otis program that y'all approved back in June. We corrected a typo that we found was significant changes there. We added $8,900 to the high school's budget for a sports medicine class through the health sciences pathway. We're not sure that's going to happen or not, but it was easier to put it in and not to come back. And then once the principal was hired at the UC Spalding Academy, we did a couple things to clean that up. They had been coded to some different funds because they didn't really have its own school per se until the principal was hired. So we cleaned those up and coding. And also each school gets $110 per ADA for previous year for some supply money. So we allocated that. It's $5,200 to them to have a budget to operate off of, just like the other 7 schools. On the revenue side, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but due to COVID, the county clerk's office being closed for a few months, we're behind on, we were in the year, this year, down about $140,000 what we anticipated on collections of that. We budgeted about 700 and about 560. We're anticipating that's going to roll over this year when people are paying both taxes and whatnot. So over 2 years, hoping that's going to be a push. Obviously, our local transportation, we did get some reimbursement for the same aid transportation. That was down due to COVID hitting. We quit going to school in March, so it was kind of anticipated. The big one coming up is typically we would budget somewhere around $200,000 in revenue for our interest earnings on our accounts at the bank. But again, we talked about that going from 1.53 down to 0.25. Big difference. So June, we got in around 21,000. The other 2 months so far, we've gotten around 3,000. So we're going from about 200 revenue potential to about 35 to 40,000 revenue potential. So that's just the fact of the matter. And then the question you always ask a lot, our carry forward balance in the unaudited AFRs. This is not 100% done through the, we're not completely finished with the audit with the White Company, but it looks like about 5,471,000 carry. That's kind of what we're saying on that 5,556. We're running at 5,471 carry forward. It's subject to change a little bit based on the last part of the audit that's still to come. Other than that, it's pretty much straightforward what y'all approved and made at the community bunch.
Any questions for Scott? Any comments? Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it, need a motion for adjournment.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.